Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners, to a brand new edition of the Pewter Pregame Show, brought to you by BetUS. You heard the cannons firing off. That means you know it is a game day. It's a special Thursday edition of not only the pregame show, but the Pewter Game Day Show and Bucs football as they travel to Atlanta. They're in Atlanta right now, and we'll take on the Falcons later this evening. So a lot to preview on this morning's show. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me, my fellow co-host and the face that runs the place at pewterreport.com, SR, Scott Reynolds. Scott, how are we feeling going into this game?
I'm super excited, Matt. You and I talked just before the show started, and I usually don't get excited for like Thursday night games because it's during the week. It's a night game. I'm an old man, Matt. I'm not gonna make my bedtime. I'm telling you, man, I'm fired up for this game. I'm on Celsius number 1. There's the orange flavor. It will be a 2 Celsius day, so probably a cherry cola later this afternoon. But I'm fired up for this game, Matt.
Oh, yeah. It's a very exciting one because it's the first time these teams are going against each other, but there's this big fight feel to it because even though they play against each other every single year, the difference this time around is the Falcons haven't been a true threat for a couple of seasons in terms of like trying to win the division. They have a new coaching staff. Kirk Cousins is in there, so the big new signing. So it's almost like the first time you're watching a big time fight of Mayweather Pacquiao back in the day when they had never fought before, and that was the first time. Or if you're a UFC fan like myself, in a couple of months, John Jones is fighting Stipe Miocic, which is like going to be one of the best heavyweight fights of all time. When you have these two teams, you see them fighting other people, and you're like, man, I can't wait till when they actually go against each other, and we're finally getting it tonight. And we'll get to see it in a couple of weeks, also in October. But this is a great opportunity for the Bucs to really put a stranglehold on the division, especially with the Saints playing the Chiefs, I believe, on Sunday night or Monday Night Football. The Bucs could get a win early. That even puts the pressure a little bit more on the Saints, and the Bucs will be looking at an extended lead going into New Orleans, but they obviously have to take care of business first on Thursday night.
Yeah, and you mentioned Thursday night, Matt, and that means that we'll be having a Pewter Game Day show, and that is tonight at 8:15, Tampa Bay at Atlanta. So make sure you join Matt Matera. He's going to have Bailey Adams on, Adam Slavon, a couple of guys from WDA, including T-Kraz. So if you have not watch Pewter Game Day yet, you're missing out because sometimes those announcers can be biased against the Buccaneers, and you're watching it on TV and you're like, these guys suck. Well, the cool thing is we don't. We know what's going on with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's exclusive Buccaneer analysis. Matt Matera is at one Buccaneer place at all the practices, press conferences, in the locker room, giving you that insight. So when there's an injury and you're like, what's going to happen now? Matt is going to be there to deliver the news, as well as the reactions to those big plays. Maybe it's a Yaya Diaby sack or a Zion McCollum interception. You're going to be getting that with Pewter Game Day. So make sure that you tune in about 8:10. We'll start the broadcast a little bit early, but the game kicks off at 8:15. You can watch it right here on Pewter Report TV. We'll be streaming on pewterreport.com, as well as our X and Facebook channels, which are at Pewter Report. Should be a great night tonight, Matt.
Absolutely, and we keep it very interactive as well with people in the comments and the chats, and that's another fun thing. Like, when a broadcaster makes a comment during a game, you may say to yourself, like, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about, or I totally agree. But unfortunately, like Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit don't hear you. You're not in the booth with them.
That's right.
Here, you can feel free to disagree with me. Maybe we agree on something, and I get to plenty of comments during the show, so it's very interactive as it could possibly be.
Speaking of comments, Micah Frank says, about to start the road trip from Chattanooga, Tennessee to Atlanta, going to tonight's game, listening live on the drive. Pewter Report is the best.
Go.
Thank you so much. Stay safe in your travels and enjoy the game tonight. Let's talk about the game, Matt, because this show is sponsored, as always, by BetUS. That is our preferred sports book here. And when you look at the line tonight, let me get your thoughts on this, Matt. It is Tampa Bay +1. So the Falcons are favored. But what is your thoughts on this? Tampa Bay +1 was the exact same line for last week's home game against the Eagles. What are your thoughts on this line tonight?
Yeah, I think it's a fair line. Typically in gambling, when it's two teams that are somewhat close to evenly matched up, I mean, we can argue who has the more talent at certain positions, but a little bit of splitting hairs. But typically, when Vegas is making lines, they tend to favor the home team, and rightfully so. You got the crowd behind you and things of that nature. So I
Yeah.
think one is fine. Sometimes it went up a little bit to +2. Depending on how people feel, it may even go down to just money line or pick 'em, which is
Yeah.
you pick just which team to win. So I think it's a fair line. Talent wise, very similar. I think the Bucs are a little more put together right now than
Yeah.
the Falcons are, but I think that's reasonable. I don't really have any issues with it.
Well, if you're thinking about putting a wager on the game or maybe exploring some prop bets, do it at BetUS. That is, again, our preferred sports book. And you can get 125% bonus in your first 3 deposits when you sign up, plus 10% gambler's insurance. I know some other sites, they'll have a one-time promo when you join and sign up with their particular company. Not a bad US. It's the first 3 deposits, 125% bonus. That's a lot of money in your pocket, folks. All you have to do is go to BetUS and use the promo code Pewter to activate that bonus. That's PEWTER, and then place your bets. And good luck, Matt. Do you like any particular prop bets for tonight's game? I know did you just put out your Pewter picks and props video, and
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on a particular prop bet that you like tonight?
Yeah, so you can check out Peter Picks and Props on our YouTube channel. I also do college football and NFL picks, like besides the Bucs. So the video is still good for the whole weekend to check it out. But yeah, I had a couple that I liked. One in particular, a fan favorite that everybody has quickly loved, Bucky Irving. I'm taking over 8.5 rushing attempts for him in this game. So it
There
doesn't
you go. Yeah.
matter, if he gets a 30-yard run or a -2-yard run. It's just
Right.
the 8. He has to get at least 9 rushing attempts
Yeah.
essentially, and he ran 10 last week against the Eagles. Rashad White did as well, but I'm also kind of banking on, and I know Bucky has or had the hamstring issue, but he seemed good to go.
Yeah.
I'm banking on the fact that Bucky's the younger guy, he's the rookie, and
Right.
it's a short week, so they're going to decide, all right, you're a little bit younger, a little more youthful and lively, so we're going to lean on you in the run game a tad bit. And with the Bucs probably inability to really chuck the ball deep down the field and getting a lot of cover 2 looks, it may inhibit the Bucs to run the ball a little bit more. So one of my prop bets is Bucky Irving over 8.5 rushing attempts.
I like it. I just dropped Matt's Pewter picks and props video link in the chat, so make sure you check that out. Again, it's also available on Pewter Report TV. So let's talk about the Bucs roster right now. Just for clarification, this is a Thursday night game. If this was on a Sunday or Monday, then the Buccaneers would have to have their practice squad elevations known the day prior. But since it's a Thursday, they have until 4:00 today, Matt, to make some elevations. And right now, with Trey Palmer and Jalen McMillan both going to be out for this game, it appears that Tampa Bay is going to be activating 1, if not 2, wide receivers. And the reason I say 1, if not 2, is because we see a lot of wide receivers in this offense. It's basically a 3 wide receiver set on most plays with Liam Cohen. And right now you've got 4 healthy wide receivers, and Mike Evans, 31, Sterling Shepard, 30, Chris Godwin, 28, and then the rookie Cam Johnson. So there's the 4 healthy wide receivers. And if an injury happens to one of those guys, now you're down to 3 wide receivers for the entire game. That means nobody comes out. So this might be a game, Matt. We've seen it before when the Buccaneers were really banged up at defensive tackle without Vita Vea, without Kalijah Kancey, them activating 2 defensive tackles. So what that means is you might see both of the practice squad wide receivers, Ryan Miller as well as Cody Thompson, activated for this game.
Yeah, Cody Thompson was a player that many of us were big fans of during training camp and thought that he should have made the team. He showed some receiving prowess in training camp and can do a lot on special teams. So he would certainly be my first pick as far as the wide receivers go. They did sign Sterling Shepard to the active roster after making an abundance of roster moves
Yes.
on a short week. So, yeah, I'm curious how much of a factor he will be, or Cameron Johnson, if Cameron Johnson can have a little bit of like a bounce back performance after dropping that touchdown. But they're going to need everybody, because I think the Bucs are still at their best when they get those little pockets of contributions from everybody else.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know Mike and Chris are going to lead the way. But I don't think what Trey Palmer and Sterling Shepard did last week or a couple days ago should be overlooked. But yeah, Cody Thompson would be my guy.
Yeah. And when you look at the situation of punter, remember last week they activated Trenton Gill from the practice squad, and they deactivated or made inactive for the game Jake Camarda, who's the only punter on the roster. So if they do decide to activate both of these wide receivers, that means they will stick with Jake Camarda for this particular game. I know Josh Capo would be happy to see that. He's in attendance tonight as he lives in Atlanta, and will be live on scene with the Pewter Report's post-game coverage for us up there. So it's interesting how that could be a domino effect there. Or if the Buccaneers want to get another look at Trenton Gill, they could elevate him along with one of those wide receivers, maybe Cody Thompson, as you were talking about, over Ryan Miller. And those could be the two elevations. But the Buccaneers, as I was told this morning, trying to find out for you guys who was going to be activated and elevated, the Buccaneers have until 4 o'clock, and they don't want to tip their hand. And that's kind of a big deal, too, when you're trying to maybe work on your punt return unit and factor in things, because Jake Camarda, different punter than what we've seen from Trenton Gill. Trenton Gill's punts are short but high. Camarda's, he can knock a 60-yarder one punt and then a 36-yarder the next. So a little bit of gamesmanship here from the Buccaneers, and they'll have those elevations probably right at 4 o'clock today.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, Gill at least did a good job in terms of there was no return yards for the Eagles. And I think at times Camarda just blasted it too much, where the Gunners couldn't even get down the field.
Yeah.
And maybe, this isn't Jake Camarda's fault, but Bucs got a little bit of luck with the hang time and the Eagles running into each other and pushing Josh Hayes into the returner and recovering a fumble on a muff punt. So it shows the importance of getting the Gunners down there as soon as possible. I would go with Gill. If everything else can kind of work out, I would go with Gill again.
Yeah.
One more time, because you do have 3 roster elevations for everyone on the practice squad. Just based off of the fact that you don't want to let the Falcons get momentum.
Right.
And the Bucs should be able to move the ball down enough where I think you play the field position game and you make sure that the Falcons don't get a return. And Gill was good in that department.
Yep. I want to say for the first time since the Commanders game, everyone at Pewter Report has picked the Bucs to win. And that is correct. All 5 of us have picked the Bucs to beat the Falcons today. Matt, what was your score in the game?
I think it was 23-17. I've been on the record since the schedule dropped that I think the Bucs are going to sweep the Falcons. So spoiler, in a couple of weeks I'm picking the Bucs again, unless certain drastic things happen. But yeah, I think it's going to be. I'm taking the under in this game to get back to our gambling talk. I'm going with the under in this game. I really respect both defenses. I think Atlanta's defense has really kept them in a lot of games, and we know what Tampa Bay can do defensively. So I think it's going to be a matter of coming up with big plays. There's not going to be a ton of splash plays, but who can kind of come up in a big crunch time moment might be the difference in this one. Yeah,
so you have 23-17. Bailey Adams has the Bucs winning 30-20. I also have that score 30-20. 27-14 is Josh Capo's score, and Adam Slavon has the Bucs winning 27-20. So basically a 7 to 10 point differential for the Buccaneers winning tonight. I can see this being a close game with a late touchdown by the Buccaneers, kind of putting the game out of reach in the fourth quarter. But I would not be surprised if Tampa Bay gets a lead and then just hangs on to it the whole game. I feel like the Bucs are the better team. And as long as they don't make mistakes, those self-inflicted wounds that sometimes happen on the road, I think this team's going to be okay tonight, because Tampa Bay is going to be coming with an edge. And that Broncos game that we talked about it a couple weeks ago, that might be one of the best things that's happened to this team in a long time. They got a wake-up call. coming out, not being physical, maybe taking the Broncos a little too lightly. You can't take the Falcons lightly because even though they have 3
Correct.
consecutive seasons with 7-10 records, this is a different Falcons team with a different quarterback, different coaching staff. And listen, the talk all summer long in the weight room was, oh, really? The Falcons are going to just come up and win the division this year? Thought we were the 3-time division championship squad. So that will play a little bit of a motivating factor. This is not going to be a trap game. The Bucs are not looking ahead to the Saints. This is all eyes on the Falcons. For what you said, aptly so, Matt, this will be a heavyweight fight tonight.
Yeah, I almost feel better because of the Broncos debacle than I would if the Bucs were undefeated right now.
Yeah.
Because it's tough for any team to be undefeated. And shout out to Casser, who said, I'm in class, but I got priorities. We appreciate that. Yeah, it is a Thursday show. Typically, we do the show on Sunday, and people, for the most part, have off or don't have class.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get to a couple super chats
Let's do it.
Things of that nature. First of all, thank you to Paul, a.k.a. Florida Dreamhouse, who was gifted 1 Pewter Report membership. That is very, very kind of you. Thank you very much. And then Paul, a.k.a. Dreamhouse, follows that up with the $2 super chat. Thanks for that as well. Bucs win 31-17. Expect a big game from Chris Godwin. I agree with that. I think Chris Godwin, as we've seen, he's the locomotive of this offense right now. He's been the most consistent. Him back in the slot has done wonders for the entire offense. And with the 2 great safeties that the Falcons have, Baker's going to be going underneath. So who's going to be his first target underneath? In my opinion, it'll be Chris Godwin.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll talk about Chris Godwin and the matchups that he's going to be going up against. And I do believe it favors Chris Godwin for sure. When you look at what Godwin has been able to do, and I know that Mike Evans has 11 touchdowns historically against the Atlanta Falcons. This tied for the most ever by any Buccaneer player, but it's also Mike Evans's team that he has beaten up the most, that and the Panthers.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing with Godwin, though, is when you look at how he's fared against the Falcons, he's even been more prolific, especially lately. Last year, he had 6 catches for 66 yards, 5 catches, 53 yards. 6 catches, 61 yards the year prior, 6 catches, 55 yards. So he's gotten kind of a high volume of plays in terms of getting fed. And like you said, he's the engine of the offense. So he is going to get volumes tonight, but he's also had some explosive games too. Go back to 2021, 15 catches, 143 yards against the Falcons. He had a 7-catch, 184-yard, 2-touchdown game against Atlanta. Back in 2019. I know we're turning back the clock a little bit, but one of his best games also came at Atlanta's expense. 8 catches, 114 yards, 2 touchdowns. So as much as Mike Evans has gone off against the Falcons, Chris Godwin has been just as deadly, almost like Paul, a.k.a. Florida Dreamhouse, who gifted yet another Pewter Report membership.
Yes,
so that's 2. Thank you so much, Paul. Appreciate that.
And then we have a super chat from Hezo813. Thanks for this $10 super chat. Says SR Matty Diamonds, like I asked before, if the Bucs win these next 2 games, so that would be tonight against the Falcons and next week against the Saints, would y'all amend your win predictions? If they lose these next 2, would y'all amend in the opposite direction? So when you asked us the first time, I think I said I would tack on 1 more win because we all had them at 10-7. I think I would remain the same. I think I would, if they win these next 2, I'd add on 1 more win.
Yeah.
If they lost the next 2, I think I would still stay put with 10-7 because the Bucs at least have shown the ability to bounce back, whether it was losing 6-7 last year or playing terribly against the Broncos and then kind of putting a beating on the Eagles. So I would add on 1 if they win the next 2.
Yep.
I would stay the same if they lose the next 2.
I would say for me, it's a little too early. Injuries can still play a factor in the season. And the good news is the Bucs stand to get several players back maybe for that Saints game, because that Saints game is not for 10 days. So they're going to have a little bit of a mini bye week here to get some guys healthy. We talked about it on the Pewter Report podcast yesterday with Luke Gedeke and Antoine Field Jr. being on the cusp of maybe coming back. Same with Kalijah Cansey. I think at least 2 out of those 3 guys are back for the Saints game. The biggest thing for Tampa Bay, though, Matt, is they just can't afford to lose anybody. This needs to be a clean game because Servassier Dennis likely out for the year with that shoulder injury on injured reserve. Trey Palmer has a concussion from that last game, and he will not be available tonight either. So even though the Buccaneers have piled up some wins at Detroit, at home against the Eagles, they've come at a price. Vita Vea missed that Broncos game in the second half of that Lions game because he got hurt in the game. So the interesting thing too is this: I talked to Yaya Diaby about the return of Vita Vea, and he's like, man, and Yaya's one of the coolest cats, man. We love Yaya.
He is.
He said, yeah, I'm so glad that he played last week because not only did he help us, but I'm the guy that took out his knee with some friendly fire against the Eagles. And then I said, that's right. And didn't Vita take out your ankle in training camp? He's like, yeah, man, we got to stay away from each other. We're hurting each other too much out in the field. But he said, yeah, in that Lions game, when I rolled into his knee, I was like, man, please get up, Vita, please get up, because he didn't want to be the guy that took out Vita Vea. But I'm telling you, Matt, there's something about it. And I asked Vita about this on Wednesday or Tuesday, actually, at one Buck Place. He's a fast healer. Something about Vita Vea, man. He just bounces back quick. And he had a fantastic game last week. And we'll talk about his performance and what he'll be able to do against the Falcons backup center today. But let's get to some more of these super chats before we dive into our matchup.
You guys have been great this morning. The super chats are rocking and rolling. So sticking with the defense, thanks to KJ Chap for this $2 super chat, who says, how are you feeling about Jamel Dean at this point?
Well, I feel much better about Jamel Dean because he's coming off one heck of a game. He played a fantastic game, I thought, against the Eagles. Now, it's easy, right, when you don't have A.J. Brown to cover and you don't have Devontae Smith to cover. Those are the 2 top targets for Philadelphia, and that's certainly advantage Tampa Bay secondary right there. But if you look at the Pro Football Focus grades, and it's not the Holy Grail, it's not the Holy Bible, but 86.1 grade, that's his best grade in a long time for Jamel Dean. He had an 87.1 coverage grade. So I think, if anything, he's feeling much better about himself. He had his worst game of the season against the Broncos, best game of the season last week against the Eagles. So not only did Tampa Bay bounce back, but Jamel Dean bounced back, and he's going to have his hands full because Drake London has not really gone off this year in terms of just having like one of those days. But as I wrote about in SR's Pick 6 preview this week, Drake London only has 3 100-yard games in his career. And he was a first-round pick back, in 2022. So he's only been doing it for a couple of years. But 2 of those have come against the Buccaneers, including a huge game, 10 catches, 172 yards at Atlanta last year. So he loves going up against the Buccaneers. Tampa Bay secondary is going to have to lock him down. They cannot afford a breakout game from Drake London on primetime tonight.
Yeah, I feel fine about Jamel Dean. I think he's been solid overall. Yeah, he got beat on one play in Detroit. Yeah, he got beat on one play in against the Broncos. But again, his ability to bounce back, he's shown a little bit more of a physical nature. I mean, taking out Mekhi Becton, the offensive lineman. So I think he's been fine, and especially when you have the upstart play of Zion McCollum, who's turning into a lockdown corner. I think that helps out Jamel Dean as well, even though he's on the other side of the field. So I have my biggest worries about the Bucs corners are staying healthy more than their performance on the field.
Well said.
So
totally agree.
Thanks to Michael T. A little bit of a different question, but hey, you super chat us. We're happy to talk about it. So Michael T with the $4.99 super chat says, what do you guys think are some potential free agent targets for the Bucs?
The Bucs really like their roster right now, right? I mean, they really do. You saw that emergency signing of Ben Steely from the street because they just needed an extra body. I mean, when you're elevating Mike Green and CJ Brewer, right? That's all the defensive tackles they had, and then they needed another one, so they signed him. But they parted ways with him this week. They just really like their roster, Matt, and every player that has been brought up, it's been a practice squad elevation, mostly, and then they signed Sterling Shepard from the practice squad to the active roster. So I don't know that there's a need out there that they really want to go out and necessarily, make a transaction for. Now, if there's a season-ending injury, I could see that. But we even saw Antonio Greer get elevated from the practice squad and signed to the roster to fill in for Servassier Dennis. So once again, the Buccaneers sticking with the guys that they brought to training camp that performed in the preseason. I don't know that Jason Light is out there looking for any particular free agent to come in and help this team right now.
Yeah, I was kind of looking like further down the road, like next off season, and not like any player specifically, but like position wise, edge rusher, depending on what they get from that group the rest of the season.
Yeah.
I think like a tight end, maybe a little more efficient tight end might be something that the Bucs might explore in free agency. I think a backup corner or depth corner, depending on, again, what happens with Dean this year. Yeah. And inside linebacker, because KJ Britt is a free agent, but they will have Servassier Dennis. But as we know, Servassier Dennis a little injury prone. But that's a topic for discussion down the road. But
you bring up tight end, and I'm going to put you on the spot here for a minute. Who's the better tight end, Cam Brate in his prime or Cade Otton today?
Oh, right now it's Cam Brate in his prime because he's a legit threat as a red zone receiving tight end.
Right.
Cade Otton hasn't proved that.
Yeah. Now you're right on, right? So having said that, I love your point about the tight end position because when this team won a Super Bowl in 2020, they had Cam Brate and they had Rob Gronkowski, right? You had a legit superstar, and then you had kind of a super sub, right? That number 2 guy when OJ Howard was out for the year, tore his Achilles early in the season against the Chargers that year. Cam Brate was the tight end number 2 and still had some juice, was that red zone threat opposite Gronk. And so to me, if you're saying, and I agree with you, that there's no Gronkowski on this roster, and if there isn't a Cam Brate on this roster, that might be the position that they go out and get a dynamic playmaking tight end in free agency. And we'll see. Devin Culp has been inactive. He's got some speed, but I think he needs to add some size and get some seasoning and some experience. But that might be a position. That's a good question and good good analysis by you, Matt.
Thank you. And they don't really play Payne Durham either. So I think some of us thought that this would be a time where Payne Durham could take that next step forward, but he's only getting like 10 snaps a game. So there's only so many.
And he's not dynamic. We could say that. He's not going to beat anybody down the field and work the seam. That's for sure.
Shout out to Joel L. Regan. Thanks for this $2 super chat. He says, Happy game day, SR, Matt, and my Pewter people. Happy game day to you as well, Joel. A very, very fun matchup coming up tonight, and hopefully it goes the way of the Bucs. We have a $10 super chat from Cody Parsons. Thank you so much, Cody. He says, if the Bucs can get an interception tonight, who do you think will make the play and why?
That's a good question. You know what? I'm going to go with Jamel Dean. He's getting close. He was so close to that interception last week that would have been a scoop and score, but then come back because there was a penalty, I think, on KJ Britt blocking the back. So who's going to get the first interception? I'll go Jamel Dean because if I'm Atlanta, I try to get Drake London matched up with Jamel Dean rather than go head to head with Zion McCollum, who has done a really good job, not just to start this year, but has had some pretty good battles against Drake London. So I would say either him or, Matt, there's this other guy played in the state of Georgia for the last couple of years, Tyke Smith, who has yet to get any interception. Didn't have one in the preseason, hasn't had one yet, but his play is getting better and better and better. He's a splashy player. With some Georgia Bulldogs maybe watching in attendance tonight on TV, let's see if Tyke Smith gets his first interception in his return to the state of Georgia.
And he's familiar playing in that stadium as well with all the SEC championship games and things of that nature. So my suggestion, or I guess my pick, Zion, I think, is the leader in the clubhouse. Everyone's going to pick Zion McCollum, which makes a ton of sense. I'm actually going to go with somebody that already has an interception on Kirk Cousins, and that's Christian Izzy.
That's right. There you go.
You got to think it is a little tantalizing when you look at the size of Drake London and the size of Kyle Pitts, and also the stature of Christian Izzy, and you say, "Oh, wow, you got a huge height advantage there." But something that we talked about a little bit is going down the middle of the field. The longer Kirk Cousins throws, the less velocity there is. So I think you may get an underthrown ball. And Christian Izzy, while he's not big size-wise, he has all the athleticism in the world, so I think he can undercut a pass. especially if Jordan Whitehead might play in a little more in the box or in a more physical role. I think Christian Izien gets his second interception of the season.
No, I'm with you. I would not be surprised about that at all. This is another super chat here from Simon, who had a chance to reconnect with him. It's Simon over in London, and then got a chance to meet him again and see him again when they were in town for that awful Broncos game, when the Bucs UK crowd was over here celebrating 40 years of fandom over there in the UK. Prayers up for us UK fans. The game will end around 4 a.m. Friday morning. Great to meet Scott again at the Bucs UK event. I'm saying Bucs win 27-20. I love the prediction. And I love your passion, you UK fans. My goodness. Let's stay up till 4 in the morning to watch this game. I'm going to stop.
Thank you so much for the super chat.
I'm going to stop bitching and complaining that I got to stay up till like 11:30 to watch this game. So, man, that's some dedication right there. You guys are fantastic. Bucs UK
I would be
crowd
recording the game or something like that. But yeah, that's passion for sure.
It is. Yeah. I mean, all of our international fans, and that's the great thing about having, these Monday shows that we do, because we do roll call and we see you guys in the chat all the time. We can't get to every single comment, but we see you guys from all over, from international, with Netherlands, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, just watching the show. And it's awesome. We love our Florida peeps. We love our continental Americans, but man, the Canadians, the Puerto Ricans, everybody from around the globe watching the show is it's amazing. The following that we have, thanks to you guys, the growth that we have is phenomenal. We're knocking on 16,000's door right now.
Yeah, we're less than 200 away.
Yeah, 800 something. So make sure you hit the subscribe button. It's free. You can become a Pewter Report TV channel member if you want to, but hit the subscribe button. It's free. And we appreciate everybody pitching in to help us grow this channel. It's awesome. Let's get to some of these matchups to watch, Matt, because there are a lot of good ones tonight. And we're going to start with the Bucs offense versus the Falcons defense. The Bucs got off to a very hot start last week, so let's start with the offense. Hopefully they can get it going again in the first quarter. Cody Mauch versus Grady Jarrett. Grady Jarrett has been getting it done for the Falcons, well, a long time, all the way back to when the Buccaneers had those horrible uniforms.
Yeah.
But he has been a bit of a buck thorn in the side for quite some time. Cody Mauch has, when it's good, it's great. When it's bad, it's ugly in terms of his blocking reps. How do you see this particular matchup going tonight, Matt?
I think Grady Jarrett is still pissed off from the time that he sacked Tom Brady, and they called a roughing the passer, even though it was not roughing the passer, and it was clearly a Bucs getting the benefit of having Tom Brady as their quarterback.
Right.
I think Cody is taking a step in the right direction, but Grady Jarrett is one of the best defensive tackles on the Falcons team. He's one of the best guys on the defensive line for the Falcons, is really what I should say. And because of that, I'm going to take Grady Jarrett.
I am too. We did see at times last week with Jalen Carter, Liam Cohen did the right thing and slide protection with and getting some double teams on Jalen Carter. He had center Graham Barton help out Cody Mauch. I would expect that to happen tonight, but David Onyemata can also beat you as well. He's been a little bit of a pain in the Bucs side as well, whether he was a New Orleans Saint or now a Atlanta Falcon. So I do like this matchup too. When it is one-on-one for sure, I got to give the advantage to Grady Jarrett.
Yeah.
Bucs wide receiver Mike Evans versus cornerback A.J. Terrell. Terrell is, he's the best cornerback they have. He's got some size. They like to match him up. It'll be interesting to see if Jimmy Lake, the Bucs, former Bucs defensive backs coach, who's now the defensive coordinator, good friend of Raheem Morris, if he is going to do cat coverage, which means wherever that cat goes, you get him. And because we're going to see Liam Cohen move Mike Evans all over the field, he's not going to be that static X receiver split out on the weak side of the formation. He'll get his one-on-one reps there. But A.J. Terrell, when he's matched up with Mike Evans, that's an interesting matchup for Atlanta.
Yeah, it's a fun matchup. A great wide receiver against a really good corner. If the Falcons play a little more man-to-man, Mike Evans loves it when they go man-to-man on him because he doesn't see that too much. He's seeing it more this year based on the new offense with Liam Cohen. I think we're going to see a lot of, drag routes, slants, things of that nature.
Mesh concepts.
Specific designs to beat man-to-man coverage. So I'll take Mike Evans in that aspect of it, though I do think it'll be a little bit more of tough sledding the way it was like against Patrick Surtain, who played well against Mike, but I'm still going to take Mike. He's a future Hall of Famer.
I'm doing the same thing. If you watched the mic'd up on
Yes, very
Buccaneers.com
entertaining.
with Mike Evans, he was mic'd up for that Eagles game, which was great. He was chirping at the Eagles DBs. That was always fun. But he also made a good comment, Matt. He's an older guy now. He's 31. He was in the huddle talking to his players. He's like, man, this feels like training camp out here because it was a hot day.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is it's air conditioned tonight. So I would expect old man Mike to maybe feel a little fresher even heading into the fourth quarter. I think Mike's going to have a night tonight. So I'm going to go with Mike Evans as well. No Luke Gedeke for yet another week. But you know what? And I don't want to jinx it, but Justin School actually played pretty well last week. But they'd love to have Luke Gedeke in. He's not played since week 1. But Justin School versus Matthew Judon. And Judon started off the season with 2 sacks. He's 32 years old. He's not the player he used to be. How do you see this particular matchup, Matt?
I'm going to take Matthew Judon in this one. I don't think School's going to be as bad as, Aiden Hutchinson in his first start, and he is getting better and better each week. Judon, I think because he is older, it might take a tad bit more. I know he had the sacks early in the season, but sometimes it takes a little bit more to really get the engines going. I think he looks at this matchup, a veteran against a backup, a guy that's been in the league for a little bit, but certainly not with the experience that Justin School has. And I think veterans know how to kind of get the better of the backups in these situations. So I'll go with Matthew Judon.
If the Buccaneers can get this to be a push or it's a stalemate, I mean, that's a huge win actually for Tampa Bay. But
yes, agreed.
Matthew Judon's a physical power player. And the last time School faced one of those guys, it was Zach Allen, and he did it okay against him. But Aiden Hutchinson's kind of the same way. And it didn't end well, especially on the road with that crowd noise. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Matthew Judon. Wouldn't be surprised if Justin School has a false start in this game. Hopefully it's not a timely drive killer, but we'll see. Speaking of killers, Chris Godwin has been killing it in his contract year this year. He's going to be that slot receiver for Tampa Bay. And the nickel corner is D. Alford, although we might see some other cornerbacks rotate in there because Jimmy Lake does like to mix it up a little bit. You might see Mike Hughes in there, or more importantly, Clark Phillips, who I think is a pretty good player as well. So whether it's Alford or Phillips, how do you see Chris Godwin faring tonight in Atlanta?
I don't think there's anyone or anything that can slow down Chris Godwin. He is that good in the slot. So I'll keep this short and sweet. It's Chris Godwin because nothing can stop him.
Yep. Baker Mayfield versus the Falcons safeties. We talked about it a little bit on that Wednesday show, which was yesterday, our Bucs Falcons preview. Jesse Bates, 6 interceptions last year. Thankfully, none against Baker Mayfield, who's smart enough to avoid him. But now, when you've got 2 safeties, not just Bates, who was a Pro Bowl safety, but they also imported Justin Simmons. Now they've got 2 safeties. I expect them to play a little bit more cover 2 because of that, really taking away the deep part of the field. Baker Mayfield has got to avoid throwing in either one of these guys' directions. Both have interceptions. Both came at clutch times, and both of these players are experienced veterans. So how do you see Baker Mayfield going up against the terrific tandem of Simmons and Bates?
Yeah, I see it as a push because I think Baker will kind of go on what he did last year and not even think about going in their direction. But on the flip side, that means that he's not turning the ball over or putting the ball in harm's way. So it's a push because the Falcons kind of get a leg up on the fact that the Bucs won't be able to push the ball down the field and get those big, like 25-yard plays. But on the other side of it, if the Bucs can find a way to still be effective running the football and some of those shorter intermediate routes, the Bucs can still orchestrate and conduct their offense the way they want to without turning the ball over. So that's why I kind of have a push in that sense.
You know what? I think in past offenses, Bruce Arians' scheme, Dirk Cutter, where they really push the ball a little bit more down the field, you might see Baker Mayfield be in jeopardy a little bit more with some of those safeties over the top. With this Liam Cohen offense, and you're going to see the same thing from the Falcons offense, a lot of short passes, a lot of crossers, a lot of plays designed to get the ball in the receiver's hands quickly and get them on the move so they can get some yards after catch. So if the Falcons do play a lot of cover 2, which I expect, or maybe some quarters coverage, it's just going to open up stuff underneath, whether it's for Sterling Shepard or Chris Godwin or Mike Evans. We saw a patient Baker Mayfield be surgical last week against the Philadelphia Eagles, and I expect a similar type performance tonight. Be patient, take what the defense gives you. I'm not really scared of the Falcons' pass rush. I think Tampa Bay's offensive line is going to come out with a physical presence. So I like Tampa Bay quarterback Baker Mayfield playing the same type of game he played last week and having some success. If you want to have some success tonight with your food and your football, well, there's one place to go, and that is Walk-Ons, which has got a tremendous menu. And it's also run by a former New Orleans Saint, which is interesting.
Game day at Walk-Ons is just different. And it starts with the way our teammates prep each dish from our scratch menu. No shortcuts. We are hand cutting every single mozzarella log straight from the block. Hand peeling, stuffing, and bacon wrapping each voodoo shrimp. Hand carving ribeyes for our steaks and po' boys. And hand slicing, then tossing our boneless wings and our house-made sauces. With wall-to-wall TVs and food like this, why would you want to watch anywhere else? That's game day. The Walk-Ons way.
So nice that the Buccaneers retired Drew Brees with an L in that 2020 NFC divisional playoffs at New Orleans on the way to a Super Bowl. Well, you can check out the Buccaneers as they march towards another Super Bowl, maybe this year. At Walk-Ons, they've got a great happy hour menu, and that's Monday from 3 to close, Tuesday, of course, all day, Wednesday and Thursday. Well, that's the key thing, right? Because today is Thursday. They have 2 happy hours from 3 to 6 and from 9 to close. So you can get there early, have some dinner, take advantage of those happy hour prices. And then maybe if you want to stay around and watch the game, it's a great place to do it. TV's galore, 9 p.m. to close. So you can get the happy hour probably right around halftime. $3 happy hour pours, $3.99 domestic pints, $4 house wines, $5.49 22-ounce domestic drafts, $6 fried pickles and small waffle cheese fries. Those are fantastic. $7 boom boom shrimp or the queso dip. $8 boneless wings and cheeseburger sliders. So it's a fantastic place to watch tonight's game. And also make sure you head to Walk-Ons this weekend, even though the Bucs aren't playing. Saturdays and Sundays for college and pro football. $4.49 pints of Michelob Ultra, Bud Light, Budweiser. $5.99 22-ounce pours. $5 silver Heineken 12-ounce cans, and $5 neutrals, assorted flavors. It's the best place to go to watch the game, and make sure you're doing that tonight. And you can also, while you're there, put your headphones in and watch Pewter Game Day too. That's what's so cool about it.
Yes, you can. We have another super chat. Thank you to Money Dollar Cash for this $4.99 super chat. It says, you just mentioned Godwin is in his contract year. Do you think we can/will re-sign him? He can obviously command some serious money. Yeah, that's the interesting side of all of this, is the better Chris Godwin plays, the more that his price goes up. What we have learned is if the Bucs want to keep a guy, they typically keep a guy. Look at how they brought back Baker and Mike Evans and Levante and extended Antoine Winfield Jr. and extended Tristan Wirfs. When there's a will, there's a way, and there's no better front office in keeping their guy than the Buccaneers front office. So, I think they can, and hopefully they will. We got to see how the season plays out. Yeah. But if they want him, I think they'll get him.
I think so too. He's just so important from a leadership standpoint too. I mean, he does all the right things. He's a great willing blocker. He's just so vital. And just when you think, okay, this team signed or they drafted Jalen McMillan, they got Trey Palmer, maybe they can let Chris go. The good news, Matt, is as it stands right now, Chris Godwin's going to be the only kind of high-priced, high-profile free agent on this team. Maybe somebody else emerges later this year. Maybe I don't know if Ben Bredesen's going to be worth re-signing for a huge deal. But this isn't like last year where you had Baker Mayfield and Levante David and Antoine Winfield Jr. and Mike Evans, right, and Tristan Wirfs. This is not one of those off seasons where there's got to be all these mega deals that have to get done. There's only so much cap room. So I think they're in a position where they can afford to re-sign Chris Godwin. And if you're playing as well as he is right now, why not? Because the tandem of Evans and Godwin is elite. This is the best 1-2 punch in Tampa Bay history. Jason Light drafted both of these guys. He's got some skin in the game. Baker Mayfield loves them both. So far, so good for the chances of Chris Godwin returning. And let's shift our focus to the defensive side of things as we look at these matchups here, Matt. The key matchups for the Bucs defense versus the offense of the Atlanta Falcons. Bucs inside linebackers versus Falcons running backs. And the reason why we say this is because no Servassier Dennis.
Yeah.
Will the Buccaneers, will Todd Bowles deploy J.J. Russell? Or I don't think he's going to deploy Antonio Greer. He's a rookie coming off the practice squad. But J.J. Russell's been around. He has some game experience. Is he going to platoon with K.J. Britt? Because I don't like the matchups of K.J. Britt trying to cover either Tyler Algier or Bijan Robinson out of the backfield. Going downhill, stuff in the A or the B gap, sure. That's where K.J. Britt excels. You need him to do that. But what I'm concerned about from the Falcons standpoint, Matt, is when they see K.J. Britt in the game, are they going to audible to a pass and try to get these backs out in the flat or on a wheel route and really exploit the matchup? Because K.J. Britt is not that good in coverage.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of J.J. Russell. I love the hustle that he brings. He's an all-out, all-effort guy. You saw it a lot during the joint training camp practice with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I actually feel pretty confident if J.J. Russell is in the game and they have to platoon. I'm also in favor of the Bucs linebackers on running plays against the Falcons because the Falcons have not gotten the ground game going the way they want to. But there is a huge question mark when it comes to K.J. Britt and when he does have to cover. So because of all of that, I will take a push because there are some slight advantages. But if the Bucs can get those third and long situations and get the proper personnel when the Falcons have to pass it, that would swing towards the Bucs. We have to see how it plays out, though.
Matt, I think that's spot on analysis. I'm going to go with the push for the reasons you mentioned. Now, it'll be interesting to see if Todd Bowles has a backup plan, if he decides to maybe use Jordan Whitehead, right, a strong safety, or nickel corner, Tyke Smith on one of those particular backs coming out of the backfield. And we'll see if Zach Robinson goes to what Liam Cohen has done successfully, which is a pony package, 2 running backs on the field at the same time. Having Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson on the field would be confusing because both of those guys can run it. Right now, Algier is averaging 6.1 yards per carry. Robinson's the leading rusher in Atlanta, 4.1 yards per carry, but both of them can catch it as well. Our next matchup is Yaya Diaby versus Caleb McGarry. McGarry will play tonight. That is the expectation. He was a full participant in practice. There was some talk maybe earlier in the week that he would not play in this game because he missed last week's game, and he's been dealing with I want to say it's a knee injury. But Diaby got his first sack. A former Buccaneer, Fred Johnson, was a strip sack. So is this going to be the game where Yaya Diaby really takes off? Matt, you talked about that in this week's roundtable.
Yeah, I've been pretty high on Yaya Diaby this week, so I think I have to take him because of it. But I said it earlier on another show. We all say turnovers come in bunches, but I think sacks come in bunches as well. I think Yaya's more comfortable after getting a couple of games underneath his belt, just from a rep standpoint.
Yeah.
He's from the Atlanta area, so I think there's a little bit of that extra juice as well for him. So I will take Yaya based off of him trending in the right direction.
Yeah. This is a big blow for the Falcons, and they've dealt with this now for a couple of weeks. But Drew Dahlman, who's a really good center, is out. He's on injured reserve. So that means Ryan Nuzul will be the replacement. And if you look at Pro Football Focus in terms of the grades, he is the worst rated offensive player in Atlanta. That's not good, especially when there's a chance that he goes up against Vita Vea. And if I am defensive coordinator or / play caller Todd Bowles, I am putting in passing situations Vita Vea right on top of, in a heads up type of formation, Ryan Nuzul, who's only 6'3", 301. And I'm saying Vita drive this guy right back into Kirk Cousins' lap. Nuzul, through 2 games as a starter, has a 45.4 grade offensively, and he has a 50 grade. He is the lowest graded offensive player in Atlanta. You can bet that Chris Lindstrom is going to be helping him out with Vita Vea. But I still like this matchup. What say you, Matt?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, we saw how important Vita was last week. That doesn't change this week. He's one of the best nose tackles in the league. So him against a backup center is, without a doubt, a lopsided matchup.
The next matchup we have is the Bucs cornerbacks. We've talked about this already a little bit, whether it's Zion McCollum's side or Jamel Dean's side. If I'm Atlanta, if I'm Zach Robinson, the offensive coordinator, I'm going to try to get him matched up on Dean just because Zion is playing so well. Both of the Bucs cornerbacks are long. They've got some size. They've got some speed. They can be able to compete with Drake London, who's not a burner, but he does have some playmaking ability. He can go up and get the ball. He's a high point guy, kind of like Mike Evans, not as good. But he's had 33 targets in his 4 games against the Buccaneers for 26 catches, 381 yards, no touchdowns against Tampa Bay. But as I mentioned, he has 2 out of his 3 100-yard games against the Bucs, including the last time they played in that 29-25 win at Atlanta by Tampa Bay. He was targeted 11 times, had 10 catches, 172 yards. Now it's a different quarterback, but we'll see how Kirk Cousins fares with him finding Drake London. He's only averaging 10 yards a catch, Matt, but the Bucs can't afford to have him have a breakout game.
That is true. I'm going to take the Bucs cornerbacks in this one. Zion has been spectacular this season. I think it's actually better that Jamel Dean is going up against a taller, lankier wide receiver versus some of the other guys that he's played against this year. I still have a lot of confidence in the corners. I don't blame them for when they play the soft zone coverage. I blame Todd Bowles more than anything else for that. And I think, London's had some good games against the Bucs. But you got to remember Carlton Davis was there. There were different components on the Bucs defense. They're going to need the corners to step up, and I think that they will.
Our final matchup to watch, it's going to be kind of a rotation here. We're saying Jordan Whitehead because he's the strong safety on Kyle Pitts. So wouldn't be surprised if it's Tyke Smith a little bit, who's that nickel.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised if it is also, as you mentioned, Christian Izien getting some reps too, because Todd Bowles will put a different matchup on Pitts on different coverages depending on what's called. Pitts has not really killed the Buccaneers, although he did have a crucial catch against Tampa Bay in the last year's win by the Falcons, getting them into field goal range. Thankfully for the Buccaneers, Ryan Neal is not on this roster because Pitts had that catch and run after him. And he's just a big athletic target. He's already had his 50-yard touchdown catch this year from Kirk Cousins. So another big player the Buccaneers can't let loose in this game, whether it's Drake London on the outside or Kyle Pitts down the seam.
Kyle Pitts has had such a weird career to this point. I don't even think he did anything last week. Jordan Whitehead, I think, needs to pick it up. He was great the first 2 weeks, kind of slowed down the last 2. But, I don't know. Kyle Pitts, you kind of like never know what you're going to get. Like it could be great or it could just be abysmal. So because of the flukiness of him, I will take Jordan Whitehead.
Yeah. Well, that's it for our previews in terms of the matchups. We still have some super chats to get to. We have a $1.99 super chat here from Batman. We appreciate that, Batman. Thanks for keeping us safe too.
Yes, thank you for protecting Gotham, Batman. We greatly appreciate it. As Batman says, Sterling, I should do it in a Batman voice, Sterling Shepard should be wide receiver 3.
I love it. Yes, he should. He's better than Trey Palmer or Jalen McMillan, but both of those guys will be out tonight. So you've got to get Sterling Shepard
for career vengeance. I think he says that in the latest one.
There you go.
Yeah, shout out to Sterling Shepard. Was great last week. I'm curious how he'll respond this time around, playing more snaps and going up against a different defense that maybe isn't as open to the type of route running that Sterling Shepard has. So I'm intrigued by what he can do this week.
Great question here, as always, by Meets McGee with a $5 super chat. Thanks also for being a Pewter Report TV channel member. Do you believe we will match the energy of the Falcons, hoping to not have another dud game like the Saints game last year? I agree. Remember, the Saints lost to Tampa Bay in their building, but then the Buccaneers came out flat against the Saints. Could have won the division that game. They had to wait an extra week to win it in Week 18 at Carolina. I think the Bucs are going to come out pretty fired up because that was the recipe for success last week. Here's the good news. The most recent game, they've started fast. They were physical from the outset. They went 3 and out on defense. They scored a touchdown on offense. That's the best possible start that you can have. I'm not saying it's going to happen tonight, but it could. But then go back to that Detroit Lions game, Matt. the Buccaneers got up with a field goal on their first drive, added another field goal, 6-0. They had a little bit of early momentum, kind of took that crowd out of it a little bit. And what did Zion McCollum do? He picked off Jared Goff's first pass of the game.
Yes.
So in the last 2 wins by this team, including their only road win, we've seen the Buccaneer defense start fast and the offense start fast with points on the board. So I don't have any reason not to suspect that they'll come out the same way. That's been the recipe for success in their last 2 wins, one on the road, one at home. That's my thought. I think they're going to be fired up to play tonight.
Yeah, I think it's because it's a divisional game, and all the talk has been about how great the Falcons are, and oh my God, they're the favorite because of Kirk Cousins. The Bucs have been at their best when they're doubted and when they have that chip on their shoulder, and you don't need any extra motivation. It's already built in for this game.
Yep. Cuse, number 44, the biggest Sean Tucker fan I know, has a $5 super chat. Matt and SR, the Chicken Hawks have no pass rush. We will shake and bake them. Yeah, I mean, I'm not terribly impressed with the pass rush by the Falcons this year. I know Matthew Judon has a couple of sacks. He has not had any sacks the last couple of games. He started off with the sack apiece in each of those games. He's still a formidable foe, don't get me wrong. But Atlanta doesn't really have that quick speed rusher that a lot of teams like to have. D. Alford has a sack from the nickel when he's been blitzing. Otherwise, Grady Jarrett and Matthew Judon technically have or I should say a sack and a half. So through 4 games, Atlanta only has 4 sacks. So as long as Tampa Bay's offensive line can bring it like they did last week against the Eagles, and I think the Eagles actually have a better defensive front, I like Tampa Bay's chances in this game to keep Baker Mayfield upright and out of harm's way.
Yeah, hopefully the Bucs can continue with their ability to protect Baker Mayfield, because it was great last week, but it was abysmal the first 2 weeks or the last 2 weeks before that. So if they can keep trending in that right direction and Baker has all the time to throw, then not many teams can stop this offense. So hopefully they can do that tonight.
We've given you guys some overtime. Usually we do about 45 minutes, but this is a big game and y'all deserve a big show. Just make sure to remember to place your bets at BetUS, 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. If you want to know where to place those wagers, well, BetUS is the place. If you want to know who to pick, make sure you watch Matt Matera's Pewter Picks and Props. It's on Pewter Report TV. I've dropped the link in the chat. It's a fantastic show. It's not just about tonight's game. It's also the NFL games coming up this weekend and college games. But when you bet with BetUS, make sure you use promo code Pewter. You're going to get 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. And as always, this is the kickoff show to a Pewter Game Day. And Pewter Game Day happens tonight at 8:15 right here on Pewter Report TV. Our YouTube channel. You can also watch it on pewterreport.com. It also streams live on our X and Facebook channels, which are at Pewter Report. So lots of great ways you can watch the game tonight.
No doubt about it. Looking forward to this matchup. Hope everybody can join us for Pewter Game Day at 8:15 tonight. In the meantime, if you're not already doing so, please follow us on all our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report. And our YouTube channel right here is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment as well.
Yeah.
And like I said, can't wait for tonight. So that'll do it for us. For Scott Reynolds, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. And we'll see you later for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, game day, preview show, and everything else.
And the post-game podcast tonight.
Yes. Out.